Let's make sure that our project folder is set correctly before we get started. So I'll go to File, Project, Set, and I'm going to click on the Unit 9 project folder and hit Choose. Now I'll go to File and then Open Scene, and I'm going to open up pencil.mb. So I've got a very simple model for a regular number 2 pencil. And we're going to go in and do the UV mapping for this and then create a color map or texture to put on the pencil. So let's take a look at this in the UV texture editor. I'm going to go to Window, UV texture editor. So here we have the pencil is in a cylinder shape, and so here you can see Maya took the top of the cylinder, the bottom of the cylinder, and here's the side. And it's okay, but what I'm going to do, since I don't need information at the top or the bottom of the pencil, since the top of the pencil is going to be black for the lead and the bottom is just going to be a single color for the eraser, I'm not going to worry about these, and so I will go to, I'll have the pencil selected, I'll just go to Create UVs and then go to Cylindrical Mapping. Okay. And then let's see, I'll go to Window, Rendering Editors, and then Hypershade. And I'm going to create a new Lambert. I'll double click on this new Lambert, and I'm going to change this to number grid matte, and then I'll map a file onto the color channel. I'll click on the button right here to open up the file, and I'm going to go to uvnumbergrid.jpg and hit open. So now I'm going to right click on the object, and I'm going to make sure I'm in object mode, hold down my middle mouse button over this material and drag it onto the pencil. Now if I look at the pencil, as discussed in the previous video, we want to see squares on this pencil. So let's see, I'm going to right click, go to UV, select all the UVs here and scale it down. And we can see we're not getting the squares that we need. So let's scale it in. That looks a little bit better. But it's still really hard to tell. Definitely needs to scale up. Because the shape is so narrow, it's really hard to tell with this number grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second Lambert, and I'll call this number grid 2 matte. I'll click on the button here to map a second image. So I'm going to go to UV number grid small.jpg. So we've got number grid, the regular one, and we've got number grid 2. So I'll take this and drag it onto the object. So now that we have these smaller squares, it's going to be easier for me to select all of the UVs and scale this so that I can see a properly proportioned square. So it looks like that's our square right there. And so now I've been scaling vertically here, so now I'll scale all together to fit the entire UV set inside my 0 to 1 space on the UV texture editor. So now that I've got my UVs mapped out proportionally correctly, so I don't have any displays on the image here, now we can bring this into Photoshop and paint our texture. So I'm just going to close the hypershade, and I'll close the UV texture editor. And I'm going to right click on the object and go to object mode. And actually, I forgot. We need to have the UV texture editor open to export. So make sure that your object is selected in the panel here. And I'm going to go to polygons, and then I'll go down to UV snapshot. All right. The size can be 1024 by 1024, and let's change this to pencil. Make sure your image format is set to Photoshop, and then click OK. So now we can go to Maya, and then I'll hide Maya, and I'll bring up Photoshop now. So go to File, Open, and I'm going to go from Source Images. I'm going to click on my Unit 9 project folder. Then I'll double click on Images, and here is the UVs that we just exported, pencil out UVs.ps. Here's our file right here. So I'm going to double click on the background to unlock that layer, and we'll call this UVs. And then under, let's see, I'll go to Image, Adjustments, and then I'll go to Invert. I'll switch this from a normal layer to multiply. And then I'm going to create a new layer, drag this layer 1 below the UVs layer. Double click on layer 1 here, and we'll call this background. And I'll just take my gray color right here, select my paint bucket, and fill that layer. Okay. So now I'm going to create another layer, and we'll just call this color. All right. So the pencil. I'll just take my marquee tool right here, and I'm going to drag over everything, and I'll switch to our yellow color right here. Take my paint bucket, make sure you're on the color layer, and fill that with yellow. All right, now the bottom here is going to have an eraser, so I'm going to switch to my other color here, and I'm going to choose a, let's see, orange. No, we're going to probably want to go to pink. No, I think it should be orange. It's like a reddish. That looks like an eraser color. Let's see here. I'm going to hit OK, and I'll just unselect everything and take my paintbrush here, and I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and paint for the eraser. So I'm going to hit Command plus to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to move my canvas, so I'll hold down the space bar and then move this. I'm not quite sure about this color. I think I want to go a little bit darker. Okay. So now at the top here, different pencils, some of them are silver, some of them are green. I'm going to go with green. So I'll switch here to a green color. And there's a little metal piece at the top of the pencil. And I'm going to try and pick a decent green color. I'm going to resize my brush. So I'll go to my bracket keys on the keyboard to make it smaller. And then I'm just going to hold down Shift and drag a green line here. And I'm going to go even smaller on my brush. Okay. And then I'm going to, oops. I'm going to add some more lines here. So right here, I'm going to increase my brush size and fill this in. And then I'll decrease my brush size again and add another line right here. Alright, so now I want a black line, and I'll go even smaller on my brush. Hold down Shift, draw two black lines, and if you need to, you can zoom in. And I might just redo that second line right here, so it's right in the middle. Okay, so let's zoom out here. Let's work on the top area here. So this part of the pencil is the wood part, so let's see. We need like a brown, a light brown color. So we basically want to go to orange and then go towards the white corner here to get a light brown. So I'll increase the size of my brush, and I'll just paint this whole area this wooden light brown color here. And now I'll hit Command plus, and at the very top here I'm going to change back to black, and I'm just going to hold down Shift and add a black line for the pencil lead. Actually, we don't want black. We want something more along the lines of a dark gray. I think that'll look better. Okay. So now I've got basically all the colors that I need for my pencil. And now what we need to do is add a little bit of text on one of these, inside one of these faces or UV area. So in order to type this text, it's going to be easier for me to rotate the canvas. So I'm going to go to Image, Rotate Canvas, and I'll go to 90 degrees CCW, which is counterclockwise. I'll hit Command plus. And now I'm just going to click on the text tool right here, and I'm going to go to Arial, and I'll choose bold first. And right here under font size, let's try 24 and see how large that is. So I'm going to switch from my gray color to black, so make sure you're all the way at the bottom of your color picker. And I'm just going to type in Sanford. Let's resize this window here. And let's see. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go to my Move tool and move this text. Yeah, for me, that size will work. So now I'm going to create another text window over here. And I'm going to go from bold to regular. And then I'll type in American. And I'll just go to my Move tool here and move this. And actually, let's take our text tool, and I'm going to right click and go to Edit Type, because I need to type in one more thing, and that's HB. Okay, and I'll move this up. Click on the text tool one more time, and this time I'm going to change the size of the font from 24 to maybe 30. And I'll type in the number 2, and I'll just resize this window a little bit. Switch to my Move tool, and we need to rotate this, so let's go to Command T, and I'll just go to the point where my arrow shows up as a two-sided arrow curving around the corner here, and I'll rotate this. Basically, I want it 90 degrees. Let's see if I can type in 90. Press return. Alright, switch back to, apply this transformation. Yes, we want to hit apply. And I'm going to go back to my Move tool here. maybe go up. Use the arrows on your keyboard to make any final adjustments to that. So I think this all looks pretty good. So I'm going to go to Image, Rotate Canvas, and I'm going to go 90 degrees counterclockwise. And now we're back in our original position here. So I'm going to go to File and then go to Save. We'll just hit OK when it says Maximize Compatibility. Now I'm going to turn off the visibility on the UV layer, so we have just the color. And I'll go to File, Save As, and I'll go from Images. I'm going to click on the Unit 9 project folder. I'll scroll all the way down, double click on Source Images, and this is going to be, let's see, we'll change our format to JPEG, and this will be Pencil Color Map, and then hit Save. We can have our quality at maximum, that's okay. So I'll go to Photoshop, and I'll go to Hide Photoshop, and then I'll go back to Maya, and I'll go to Window, Rendering Editors, and then Hypershade. Create a new Lambert, and I'll call this Pencil Matte. Over here under our attributes for color, click on the little checkered button. Click on the File button right here, and let's choose our file. So click on the Folder button. And let's see here. Here's our pencil color map. I'll hit Open. Here it is on our material. So I'm going to hold down the middle mouse button and drag it onto the pencil right here. And let's see how this came out. So I'm going to hit F to frame it, and I'm going to rotate around here. And I think we could use a little bit larger of an eraser, and we might make this text a little bit smaller. The top of the pencil looks good. I like the lead here, and the wood and everything. All that stuff I think looks good. So I think I'm just going to give ourselves a larger eraser. So what we can do is we'll just minimize Maya. So I'll go to Hide Maya, go back to Photoshop, and basically I'll turn my UVs back on here, and I'm going to take all these text layers, and I'm going to right click on the layer and go to Rasterize Type. And then I'm going to merge all three of these layers. So I'm going to hit Command E to merge them together. So now I'll hit Command T to transform this. And I'll just zoom in a little bit. And I want to just hold down Shift, click and drag in the corner here to make the text smaller. Now I'm going to use the arrow keys to reposition this. And I think I'm going to go even smaller on this. So I'll hit Command T, scale down some more, press Return, and then use my arrow keys on the keyboard. And let's see, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Alright, so now let's take all of this area down here. So I'm going to take my color map. I'll select from the green line all the way to the bottom. And make sure you're on the color layer here. And then I'll use my move tool and I'll just move this up. And then I'm going to sample this color here. Take my paintbrush and paint so we make sure that we have our eraser color covering everything at the bottom here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go to, I'll take the UV layer, turn off the visibility there, and I'll go to File, Save, and I'll go to File, Save As. I'll go from Images to Unit 9 Project folder. I'll go to Source Images, Format, I'm going to change to JPEG, and then I'm going to click on Pencil Color Map and hit Save, and then we'll replace that older file. And then right here I'll hit OK. So now I'll go to Photoshop, hide Photoshop, and then I'll click on Maya, and right here I'll just click on the objects, and actually we've got our hypershade right here, so I'll just double click on the pencil material. Over here I'll go to my color channel, click on this button, and then right here under image name I'm going to click on this button to reload the new image. And now you can see our eraser is a little bit larger and our text is a little bit smaller. Alright, so I'm going to close the hypershade and I'm going to close the UV texture editor, and here we have our final version of the pencil textured. So please make sure that you save your work, and also make sure that you render an image of this and send it to the Dropbox.